Okay, so hopefully this works. Hi, this is Andrew. I'm going to make a quick tutorial on how to make gussets because I thought this video needed to be done next week and it needs to be done this week. And today is Friday and it's almost the end of the week. So let's get to it real fast. Gussets are pieces of metal. They're usually plates or sheets that are used to connect two or more pieces of anything, really. Metal, plastic, tubes, other shapes. Gussets connect one part to another part or more using mounting holes with bolts or rivets in them. So if I have two pieces of tube joined at a 90-degree angle, I would make a little 90-degree gusset for that. There's a couple ways that you can do that. I'm going to go through the real fast way. So let's say I have, actually, just before I get into this, I'll open up a drivetrain that you can look at with tube. Okay. Because we commonly use tube on 299 to attach things. So here's an older project I've been working on. And you can see already in the preloaded space, we have tubes, squares, and rectangle tubes. And they have all these holes on them, and we use the holes to mount things to. So if you look at these holes, let's say I wanted to make a gusset, just to connect these two pieces of tubing, this one and this one, right? They're at a right angle to each other. The typical hole spacing between the tubes is 1/2 inch. That's something we standardize on as a team on 299. But between these two holes, I actually have 1 inch because it's you can see 1 inch right there. It's a 1/2 inch from one side wall to the other, and then from that side wall to the hole. So we have 1/2 inch up, 1/2 inch across, except for that middle point that's missing. We can just ignore that. We'll just add a hole there, and it just make the gusset symmetrical, and it doesn't matter too much. So what I'll first do is I will sort of simulate the direction of my holes and my spacing with center lines. So I'm going to make an L. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm doing 4 just because that's what looks right to me. You can have it be however many or few as you'd like, as long as it fits. I'm making them all equal for my 1/2 inch spacing. A good rule of thumb I like to follow is a minimum of 3 holes of attachment on a given tube. 2 I find is okay sometimes, but not enough other times. And more than 3 is helpful, but not always necessary. Sometimes get in the way. So each point here is where I'm going to have a circle. So I'm going to put a circle here. And these circles can be my mounting holes on the tube. Now, one tube is going to have, now you look and you say, oh, Andrew, there's 5 holes across and 5 holes up. One of those holes is the same hole, but that's okay. So yeah, it's true. There's 5 up, 5 across, and we have that middle one, or that corner one shared. If we look at this section right here, here's our corner one, and we go 5 up. If we go 5 across, we go 1. Our second one is actually this hole, right? So when we get to 3, 4, and 5, the secondary tube is only connected by these 3. So the reason I did 5 is because I know instinctually, just over my years of doing this, that if I do 5 across, really it's 1 on one tube, 1 blank spot, and then 3 on the actual tube. So this tube's going to have 5 holes in it that are filled with rivets or bolts for mounting. This one will only have 3, and that's okay. If I wanted to, I could only do 1, 2, 3, then some weird spacing 1, 2, 3. That's totally an option. I don't lose too much by doing the extra 2 holes here, and the symmetry is nice, and it makes it so I can flip it pretty easily. If you run into a situation where you need, holes 2 and 3 up here for something, you can make a smaller gusset for that, and that works. But yeah, that, and I like the 45-degree angle that we'll get to with the triangle, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So we have our hole set up, and now we're going to create our outline. So let's start by making holes around the outer edges of this gusset. It's going to basically be a big round right triangle. And we're going to make these all equal. These circles are not actually holes. The smaller ones are. The big ones are actually the outside dimension of our gusset. And we're just going to connect them, and you'll suddenly see how if we connect this to this, and that to that, and that on over. Created a triangle of sorts, and we can go fancy. We can use the trim tool up here. It's T on our keystroke if you use the 299 hotkeys. You sort of just drag it over any lines you want to delete, and if you've dimensioned everything correctly, you have a nice rounded triangle. And the nice thing about this is that 45 angle gives you a lot of strength on the gusset. So you get a lot of added strength to that joint where the two tubes meet with this triangular shape. And you can have any triangular shape. Doesn't need to be a right triangle. Will add strength, but this gives you a nice even strength from both sides. So we'll extrude that. Typically on gussets that just use rivets, we'll use either 1/8 0.125 or 1/16 0.0625 thickness. So 1/8 is a pretty good standard one. If you're aware of how the part's loaded, you can get away with 1/16 for a thinner material. It's less weight and less machining. But yeah, here is a very simple gusset. From here, if I wanted to save it, I could save it, and then when I go to my assembly, I could add it into the assembly by mating the holes concentric. Something to note, if you're adding a gusset to a tube system like this, and you're trying to make, there's really there's three mates you would make. You would have one hole concentric, another hole concentric, and you have a coincident between the flat face of the gusset and the flat face of the tube. So you sort of use the two holes to position the XY coordinate of that gusset relative to the tube, and then use coincident to put the faces together for that Z. Something you want to keep note of is if these two tubes are already mated to each other, so I can move the whole system, but I can't move these two relative to each other. I don't know why I can move the whole thing. Oh, it's probably moving in Z, isn't it? Yeah, I can live with that. But yeah, these two, see, if I go vertically, I can't move them too much or at all. So there's already mates existing here in SolidWorks. So if I were to add the gusset in and try and make this hole coincident with the gusset, or not coincident, sorry. If I had the gusset concentric with this hole and concentric with this hole, I would be over defining the system. It would give me an error. And the reason it would give me an error is because we don't want to give too much definition. We don't want to tell it too many things about how we want it to solve the assembly. Basically, you don't want to say things twice or anything that conflicts. So even though it's perfectly okay to say that yes, logically, you're going to be concentric with both these holes because that's how you designed it. That's how it's supposed to work. You already have the mate defining these two tubes' positions relative to each other. So if you try and redefine that with the gusset while that first mate still exists, it's going to give you an error. It's going to say you're over-defining the assembly. And the way you avoid that is whenever I add gussets to a tube, I'll always use two holes from the same tube to make them concentric. So I'll say, let's say, the corner one and the one right above it. They don't need to be right next to each other. You could do like the corner one, the outer one. Making them right next to each other is easy for me. If they're sequential, I can figure out where it is. But yeah, add that concentric mate to the exact same tube. Like pretty much you're like permanently attaching and mating the gusset just to one tube. And then if you did your math right and if you did your modeling right, it'll just happen to overlap with the other tube in a way that shows your design intent in real life. Okay, so that's all I want to talk about for this video. That's how you make a very simple right angle gusset. And you can make this any shape size you want. The important thing is to have your holes in the right position relative to each other, have all your angles correct, and then to surround that with material that you want to extrude. If you have any questions, ask me on Slack. or you know, I guess you could put in the comment of this video if I ever check that. Until next time, we'll see you then.